Hello and welcome to this impromptu live session here. I'm just doing it live. I doubt if anyone's on, but it broadcasts to both YouTube and Facebook at the same time. So let's see what we have here. We're doing a half-page piece of pre-printed Aged Autumn stationery paper here, and we're pairing it with a piece of reflective gold mirrored cardstock down below in this card base. Here you can do the card base out of whatever colors you want. I haven't done one of these in, I don't know, seems like a couple months here, but I always mention this. If you use a different color other than some darker tone, like black, for example, what you want to do is I would put a strip of dark, I don't know, like Sharpie pen right in here, so that when you pair these together like this, you'll want to either glue or spray mount, spray adhesive or whatever, this piece down to this top portion here. And you want that to butt up nice and flush like that. But sometimes it doesn't butt up, you know, you have a bunch of adhesive on here and you go like this and you got a little, I don't know, 32nd of an inch kind of space in between there. If it's like a piece of white, it shows through like that. So you really want to get rid of that seam as much as possible. So just put a black line down in that inner fold right there. And you should have a good seamless connection between upper and lower portion of these reflection cards. And it should give you a nice kind of three-dimensional, almost like diorama type of effect. It almost looks like a pop-up card in some ways. Okay, so we're going to try to use this pre-printed paper in hopefully what I'm thinking should be a fairly fast scenario here, scenic stamping scenario. Okay, so this portion right here represents everything from the other side of the bank, I guess you could say, water, and the lower portion represents all of the water portion. Now on this page right here, I just kind of pre-connected it in here, but I would have this separate stamp on here, do whatever you're going to do on here, and then glue it, tape it, whatever, into that location. I find it's easier to work on this part without having to worry about that seam if you already have it pre-connected into this space right here, okay? So for example, if I'm stamping this and it's going off the page like that, if I was stamping it right in this seam like this, I would have to flatten this out and mask this off and then stamp it right in here, and that seam right there, you know, wouldn't give me a good impression right on the edge right there, okay? So leave this separate. You can even leave the gold part separate and you know, tape it, put it into its space after you do all the stamping on it. But I do really minimal stamping on that lower portion, so oftentimes I just put it into place before I even start these, especially the live streams. Okay, so these are some rocks right here, and that's going to give me a bit of a shoreline on the other side of this body of water. And I'm going to stamp this Mystic Trees, I think it is, right up top here. I could have done this and had it all the way in the lower section, but what these rocks here do is it brings this area up here closer to us. If I just did this, this looks, you know, some distance away. I don't know how far it would be, 30 yards or something like that. So bring these rocks in here and you bring that whole element closer, or you can see these rocks are right, I don't know, 20 feet away, and that, you know, the tree and the rocks below it could be, I don't know, you know, like 30 yards away or something like that. So you're bringing in a lot of space here, which I thought would be important because we have these leaves here that are so close. They look like something that, you know, they're supposed to be, I don't know, a couple feet from us. Which, I don't know, in some ways, maybe they should be really smaller because they're reflective and whatnot. In this scenario, but I just thought it looked cool anyways, so I'm doing it. I'll show you what I mean when I get to that portion. Okay, so I've inked up this entire stamp with black, but I want a little bit of variation in these leaves here. I think I want it fairly dark anyway. So this is a dye-based marker, and you're cringing because you're saying, oh my God, you're coloring red into black, and that's polluting this pen, but that's the way I was taught at Stamp of the Hand to do that watercolory technique, and then you just roll the pen and your ink comes off of it. This is like a 30-year pen that I've been using on that same technique for many years. Here's an orange right here, and I'm going into some of this red here. Hopefully, the thing that I'm aiming for is I'm aiming for some of the same tones or similar tones that you see on these leaves right here. Hello, Linda. happy Tuesday here. I hardly ever do these live streams on any other day other than Fridays these days, but I thought, this one should be a really fast one, so I'm gonna kill a couple birds with one stone in terms of a Facebook and YouTube post here. All right, let's see here. I'm wondering if I should wipe some of this bottom portion off where it goes into these rocks like that. You certainly don't really need to mask those rocks, but come into it now. I'm coming into these rocks by about 1/4 inch, okay? So I'm not just stamping this right over the top. I have it overlapping into those other rocks like there. Hello at OKIE. I didn't know how to pronounce that. Thanks for checking out the videos and comments there. Good to see ya. Okay. So, for this paper here, I'm mentioning it all the time, but stamp and hold for a little bit longer than what you would normally do with bare cardstock, because you are stamping into printer inks on that type of paper, so it's sealed off a little bit. It does accept the inks fairly well, but you want that ink to be able to transfer and permeate the surface of that paper a little bit. I mean, this paper's matte paper, but you're still stamping through all of those kind of industrial printer inks on these pages, even in light areas. So it's not a super thick application, and it's not coated over, because this is stationery paper, so you should be able to write on it. But, when you're doing these imprints like these impressions, you want that ink to transfer. If I just make a stamp and I hold it for 5 or 10 seconds, that impression is probably going to be about, 20% less dark and intense. Okay, it already looks fairly light even holding it down for that long. That was black ink right there, and it's probably more of like a 80% gray at most. Okay, so hold it down. It's one of those things. This is supposed to be an aged paper, so if you stamp something out and it's like, oh my God, it didn't, it's way too light or something like that, just go with it, because it's supposed to be kind of this aged looking paper anyway. So it'll just look lighter and farther off in the distance. Let me see. Oh, is there any sound? Let me see here. I had my microphone on, or let me see. No, my speaker on. Is the sound better now? I don't know if you were getting that echoey type of thing. I was on a Zoom call to someone the other day, and I forgot I turned on my my speakers here. Okay, so anyways, so you see that little bit of variation of red and orange right in there, so it's inherently in there instead of just being all black. All right. Okay, now let me see. I was going to put some of this imagery down below here, and that will represent the foreground. This is what this is looking like right now in terms of a reflection card type of format right here. We have those leaves reflecting down there pretty well. And I want to put this little deer or something like that in here. That's why I kind of created these extra additional rocks right here to bring that a little bit closer to us visually. But let's put some of those rocks, those same rocks, right in here in this foreground area, I think. Okay. Acrylic spray to finish the cardstock. You can certainly spray seal this, but I haven't been doing too many different types of applications on this type of paper where I would need to seal it off. I used a little bit of pastel pencil on, I think it was this one. No, it wasn't. I don't know. Which one was it? I think it was, yeah. I think it was this one right here. I used a little bit of pastel pencil on this roof line here. So, I mean, if I rub it, it might come off. I can see it on my finger right here. So that, I probably should spray seal with a spray fixative, but do it really lightly on that cardstock. Otherwise, those lighter applications, especially of white pastel, it'll just like disappear. Now, if it does that, okay, all you do is just reapply it and just spray from distance just a little bit. I usually do a couple spritzes like that, and it just kind of hits it from distance. So when it lays down on there, that acrylic dries almost the instant it touches the medium, instead of permeating it and then soaking in a little bit and then thus losing some of those light on dark pastel applications. And you should be good. But the other thing, I don't know, I've been mostly using colored pencils on this type of paper lately. So I usually don't spray seal that. I don't know, sometimes colored pencils, it might benefit a little bit. By the way, so I'm using StazOn ink here on the metallic cardstock. Okay, that's the one, or I don't know, type of ink, the solvent inks that will stick to this, transfer and dry on this type of cardstock, metallic cardstock. But yeah, sometimes the colored pencils might benefit a little bit from an acrylic spray in terms of bringing out some intensity. It would probably, I don't know, if you hit it with like a thicker style of spray too, like a Krylon Crystal Clear, it could permeate this paper a little bit, and it could make these objects a little darker and a little bit more saturated as well. So, I mean, you could do little things like that if, that's kind of the strategy, but you really don't need to in terms of sealing media down, unless it's pastels or something like that, or a soft medium. If you used charcoal or, graphite or something like that. And if people were going to potentially, it was going to be a card and you're going to send it to someone where you don't know the situation, where how much it'll be handled and touched, then maybe throw a thin spray over the top. All right, so there's 3 applications of the boulders with lichen down there, like so. It's hard to see here. Here, I'll throw this down like that, so you can have these images right here. Kind of mirror those images on the other side of the pond, body of water, lake, to give the piece a little bit more depth and textural continuity. All right, let's see. let's do this right now while I'm doing this lower portion right here. Tiny rock small. Let's bring in a little bit of extra texture in here. I like how this texture can unify a little bit more different areas of a scene. It can kind of shade an area if you do it in repetition like that. But it also plays against those reflections really nicely of anything up top reflecting down here. When you have like a static object down here, it looks really good against those reflective elements. All right. Stamping on metallics like that, kind of, you have to kind of, practice around. I mean, you can get it in like 15 seconds or something like that, but it's easy to kind of make it slide a little bit on such a slippery surface that's non-porous, okay? So just, light, even pressure on here, especially with the larger ones. I always mention this, Linda, and here, Linda B here, she tested to see if you can kind of erase stays on types of elements on this type of paper. And you probably always remind me, but it was just rubbing alcohol, right? But you said stays on cleaner. You can just put on a cotton ball and just wipe that stays on ink right off of here, right? Okay, but anyways, you see those little textures down here and those ones up there. Hopefully you can see it. See, there's, I don't know, I didn't put any like right out here, but hopefully you can see it kind of, as a static element reflecting off of that. I don't know, what do you call it? Parallax or something like that when you move this around like that. I really like those little static things in this water area here. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I want to do this little deer right here, except it's going to be facing the other way. It's not going to be like that. But something like that to reflect down in that lower section is really fun to do. It kind of becomes the focal point, which it would be on here anyway, but in a reflection card format, you have it duplicated down below, so you're bringing some sort of a visual anchor point into the card, but you're also doing it in the reflection as well, which is kind of fun. So all of your efforts up here are duplicated down there, so you get twice the payoff for half the work. That should be the tagline for these reflection cards, huh? Okay, let's see. Oops, I used stays on ink right there. Let me see if it gives me a different black here. I was using my hybrid black ink up here. Maybe the VersaFine Clair might be darker up here on this paper. VersaFine Clair being a oil-based pigment ink. Okay, that's stamped out. I don't know. It's about the same as that other one. So the VersaFine, the stays on probably penetrated this paper more than the hybrid ink, because the hybrid ink has that thicker style of dark pigment, but it's stamped down a little bit lighter up there, but I think that looks fine. It just looks like the light is hitting the deer, right? And I'd say if it was like lighter down here, I'd say, well, it looks like the deer's standing in mist, right? All right. And let's do some, I thought I had balanced this piece out with a couple extra leaves like that. All right. And we'll do them, we'll try to kind of achieve a similar color scheme here. Let me see, that's like red, orange, kind of like this type of thing, but with some brown maybe. All right, let's see what we can do here. I'm just getting that brown kind of established for some of these darker little areas on here, okay? So that just looks like that. And then I go in reverse order of value. So I start dark and then I work lighter. Let me just skip to this golden yellow. Okay. And let's bring in some of these elements. Let's see. Let's go right here. This is where I start getting impatient and I want to do like a faster impression. Well, it looks okay though. Okay, that's pretty red. Let me just go with the orange this time. I wasn't sure if I was going to go dark. Here, let's go dark. And then let's go to yellow. Think about like so. Okay. This should be a lighter tone. Let's go like that. I changed the angle and rotate it a little bit like so. Stays on gives the best result. Alcohol works. Okay. So the stays on cleaner then, you're saying, gives the best results. Oh, that's interesting about the alcohol leaving a ghost image. Huh. So there's a little bit of residue or something like that using... I wonder what the difference between the stays on cleaner and the alcohol is. All right. A little bit darker, and let's go orange like so. So the other one was a little bit of brown and a lot of the yellow. The first one came out, I don't know, predominantly red. It's because my red pen, it looks like I've re-inked it or something like that. It's like super juicy, so it left a huge amount of red ink on there, even when I blended. So let's go for a different color slightly here. Okay, and let's cap it off a little bit too. Just straight black, and we'll try to give it a little bit more depth. Okay, I don't want to lift this up too fast and have it come out like a 60% gray, where, it's showing through, with all these other colors in the back of it. I want that black to look like it's fairly, substantial and closer to us. This little area right in here is kind of... I want to frame this off. This is such a dominant, like, swag right over here. So I want to kind of balance it off a little bit. So we're not balanced. This is like heavy on this side with scale, there's really heavy, large leaves over there. And this right here, I can kind of balance it off a little bit with value. So a couple darker elements like that. In theory. Okay. Let's take a look. I always like to reference how this is looking. It'd even be cool, I can put a couple like those darker leaves right in here. That might be a good idea. Now these leaves are, I don't know, they're looking farther away if I put other leaves right in here. But again, you know, it's like one of those who cares type of thing, you know, when we're playing around with scale and things like that. But see, this is one of the things I don't like about reflection cards, where this reflects down into this area right here. We have this like triangle, this wedge right here, where this imagery isn't filling out these spots. Now, sometimes I just go with it. If it's a pine tree type of forest, I put 2 pines or something like that down here in the foreground so that we can't see this little area. But if I just kind of break this up on each side with like a bit of those leaves, it'll take care of that for me, because I don't have such a long kind of line right there. Okay. It's like a wedge or something like that. So I think I'm going to do that. It's just going to take 2 impressions. All right. I guess I should take a look and see where this is going to go here. I guess right in here. All right. Large, flat silhouette style objects stamping down here. So just stamp and hold. If you're using a stamp positioner, yeah, it's easy to do too. Don't hold it down too long though, because it could dry on there. And then when you lift up, it's like dried onto the rubber and like a lot of the ink comes off, potentially. And on this side, let's go a little bit higher, I think. Come up about like so. Here, oops, I skewed it a little. I went like that, and then I felt it move like a micro bit. It didn't come out too bad, though. You don't want to slide like a 1/4 inch or something, or an 1/8 of an inch, but if it's like a small bit, it's okay. I'm going to do something right over here, too. I think I squashed this down a little bit, so it's not as crisp as I'd want. I'm not going to remove it, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put another one next to it that's sharper. You know, the leaves are a little bit sharper. I don't know. Yeah, that looks fine, I guess. Okay, so we have that. So those 2 areas right there. It kind of frames off the lower section a little bit more too. It brings those leaves down into there. And see, like that? It kind of, you know, takes care of it. I'm aware of that wedge, you know, but this is kind of coming out in here a little bit more. Like about like so. All right. This should be easy now from here on. Colored pencils. And let's render this a little bit more in terms of creating a little bit of volumes on here. So what I mean by that is making these rocks a little bit darker, and I do it in the darker areas of the designs. The designs are already tonal, okay, but right here I find that if you're doing a reflection type of thing, like the edge of objects or that bank as it transitions into the water, I think it looks better to have, in this case, rocks, but if it's grass or something like that, I find that it's better if you make this area down here a little bit darker in that transition area, okay? Now, if you want these rocks to still remain a little bit light, then see, like right here, this is the large rock, so I'm toning about a 1/4 inch, but right in here, there's only a small portion of these rocks, so I'm leaving a tiny bit of it lighter like that, so it makes it look like the rock is a little bit more 3-dimensional. I tend to like a little bit of a vignette on my scenes. So I usually go darker in the four corners. I don't know if I'm going to do it up here because it's a reflection card, so you go with the corner down here. Like about like so. This is sepia. So kind of within the color scheme of this given scenario. I'll tone some of these tree trunks a little bit more. I think I'm going to leave that a little bit light in there if I add in some white pigment ink in there. All right, let's take a look. Like that. I can go darker here. What happens in these reflection cards is when you pair it up with this reflective mirrored surface down here, this is reflecting the light up there. So you're getting light from above and then light from below. So, you know, you can see how light that is. And that's the way it looks like as is, but you add in that other, and it's a little bit of a warmer light too because it's gold down here. You can do it in silver too, but I think the gold pairs really well with this autumn scenario, color scenario. This is some brown, so this is giving a little bit more warmth to these rocks. Sometimes people, when they color with things like colored pencils or markers, you know, if they're doing like a grassy meadow, they might look for like a grass green, and I certainly do that, but I always try to achieve kind of a richer palette with using multiple tones. So I'll just pick out like a range of tones or values in a given color scheme. Right here, here's a light green and a darker green. I'm going for this mossy type of look on my rocks right here. Just to add in a different, slightly different hue into this color scheme, just so it looks a little bit different, but it still harmonizes with those different types of tones. Again, it was using a couple different greens, though, to achieve that look instead of just one. So kind of mix and match, you know, and play around with different values within the scenes you're doing. Okay, that was that. And let's go with a black here to get even darker in your darkest of areas if you want to. If your deer here, for example, could use a little bit of tone. I can even color black into black because that wasn't 100% black. So see, I'm making the lower portion of that deer a little bit darker. Okay. Maybe as it moves up in the head too, I want a little bit more of a value change like that. So you can make them a little bit richer in value. It's just a subtle, I don't know, probably 10% darker in the parts of the deer. All right, let's see here. That green looks pretty good, I think. All right, let's go with our, I was going to say the pigment ink, but I almost forget to use some of my acrylic paint pens on here because there's just so much color on here already. But these paint pens can add a nice oh, kind of textural addition to the pieces. Let me see here. I don't know if these ones are going to be too huge for this, but let's try here. So again, we're just going with that same kind of, palette as on this. 3mm, 0.7mm. These two are the same color though. I think one of them was flowing a little bit better. All right, let me try this orange. Is it gonna be like way too orange? Let's see. It's not too bad. It's also like really soaking into the paper. But let me see if I can get a little bit more color variation in here. I don't know if you can see it. But see this like darker, I don't know what, crimson red or something like that. I can add that in there and it gives it a little bit of variation. I need to shake this up more. This paint isn't mixed up well. It can get a little bit more opaque than that. It's really soaking in. Oh, there we go. Now that's going to soak in and it's not going to look quite as light as that at all. But you can see that kind of gives a little bit more dimension to those clusters of leaves like that. And then what I like to do is, if this is the fall type of scenario, hello Froggy Fresh! How's everything? How's the family? Both 2- and 4-legged. And every, whatever other configuration in between. All right, let's see here. Here's some yellow. And again, I'm counting on that yellow kind of soaking in and not being quite so light. Okay, I just want a little bit of variation in there. Like so. Let's bring some of that down into the ground, whatever cover scenario like that. Yeah, so a little bit more dimension up there. Again, that's gonna really, when it dries, it's going to be a lot darker than that. All right, let's take. I don't think I need to wait for that to dry in here. White pigment ink. Fostering 3 feral kittens. One of them goes to its new home tomorrow. Wow. When did you get them? And how old are they? White pigment ink. I think everything looks fine in here, but I just like a little bit of variation. So we here have this, whatever this, ridge or something like this in here. And then the light is coming from in here. If this was just another scene where I'm not doing a reflection card, I'd probably put something in lighter tones in the background, really faint, like more trees in the background. And it would look like this light is kind of filtering through this scenario. But these types of objects where you have a really clear kind of definition around them, they reflect in this lower area better. So it's better to keep kind of a lot of contrast in this upper area and to keep it kind of simple. Okay, but I want a little bit of variation in here, so I'm going to take some of this white pigment ink here. And what we can do is we can bring in this little bit of mist in here. And I left that area right in here a little bit lighter too. And I'm going to create some mist like right in there, okay? I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of water or something like that, and there's fog or mist rising from it in the morning or something or whatever. That type of scenario. All right, so see that little bit of added texture in there, and it's kind of nice because it's a light, airy texture next to all this kind of craggy, you know, sharper types of objects right in here. It's a little more atmospheric too, I think. And let's see, let's bring a little bit right here. Do I want that right there? Yeah. Let's do a little bit right here. Now, I know I said one of the things I was saying earlier is it's kind of nicer to have some darkness right here where it transitions into this water section. And here I am going into it later with this texture right here, which is making it lighter. But I'm not doing it across the whole lower portion. I'm just want a little bit of that additional texture and light in an area of it. And when you do that, though, when you bring in some lightness in here or wherever it is, sometimes the area next to it can look a little bit darker by contrast. So while you're not darkening it, you're adding light next to it, which, you know, whatever. By perception, it seems a little bit darker sometimes. So you're playing contrasts against one another. Which is a good way to fix kind of mistakes too. You play contrasts against one another, or you do put something next to something, and it's like, you know, don't look at that over there. Here's, you know, this over here. It's like, what do you call it? Misdirection or something like that. All right, so a little bit up top like that. I think it looks pretty good. It kind of, you know, you're adding this, whatever represents light here, and now you're putting it over the front of these objects too, like that. I'm gonna do a little bit of this. Now that I have all this kind of mist in here and this white light, I'm gonna put a little bit of a shimmery white light onto some of my objects without that white in there. Sometimes this white on this colored paper here can look a little bit extreme, but when you add that more white into it, you know, I think this pen here looks pretty good. I can add this into some of the trees as well. About like that. You can, you know, you can put little bits of dew or something like that on some of these leaves. Like that. Like there's little dots up here, you know, where that darker one is against that lighter one. It can look pretty cool. Or here's this pre-printed paper here, and if you want to just kind of bring out some of these leaves a little bit more dimensionally, you can add that little contrasting little element in it like that, and see these little sparkly things like that. They're not sparkly, but they're lighter things like that can make, I don't know, you can kind of bring it to life a little bit. You have these little bits of light kind of poking out from the background. All right, and that should be it. I was thinking about a quote stamp up here, but I think I'm just going to leave it as is. You can also do a quote in the lower section. It'd be kind of interesting to stamp out like a word or a quote stamp here in gold ink on gold, because it would stand out a little bit. But there you have it right there. So pretty fun, little, I don't know if it's little, it's a half page right here, but this was a half-page type of reflection card scenario. But starting off with these papers, oh yeah, here's another scene that I did the other day using that same paper right here, but just, you know, stamping out the covered bridge like that. But there's that same paper. This one over here, I don't know, it seems like a little bit richer to me for some reason. But starting off with those types of papers, it can make for a relatively quick scenario as far as, you know, having a piece like this, you know, done from start to finish, because half the card is already established, you know, with those leaves in there like that. So, and then the background is all kind of toned in like this and textured, so it's just a matter of like stamping the objects in there and applying some colors. So this is a few stamps up here, just a few stamps in the lower portion in black. So it's basically like stamping this out, and most of my applications of color were just like coloring these rocks right in here with a few colored pencils and the acrylic paint markers. So, and just, I don't know, like a 3 or 4 colors of each one. So pretty fun. And like I said, I used a lot of colors, but you don't really need to. I mean, I probably could have got away with like these 2 colors right here as far as colored pencils go. Oh, the paint pens, you know, maybe 3 of them like this. I do like to go a little bit, you know, push it a little bit more, you know, being that, you know, I have the pencils here, so I usually add in those intermediate colors into it, like the, you know, the lighter browns or something like that. But anyways, fun stuff, fun, easy stuff here. Hello, Cecile, how are you? 9 weeks old. Got them last week. They were really spicy. Oh, that's good. Yeah. They're chilled out, huh? Were they hissing at you and you know, when you first got them that first week or so? All right. Anyway, great to see everyone. Thanks for checking out the live here, this impromptu live. So this took about 45 minutes here, start to finish. Not too bad for a half-page card scenario. I'm looking at this right here. Even if you did like a quarter page, you know, and did it like from here over, that would look kind of cool. Just that one little element. This is what they'd call in like my drawing class we did in college. We did this assignment that always stuck with me because I always thought it was fun. It was just one class, one period. But the teacher set up this gigantic whatever structure of all of the little props, you know, to draw in class. And then on another platform, he just put like one little, it might have been on a chair or something like that. I think it was a chicken, like a stuffed chicken or something like that. But the other one had like chairs and blankets and I don't know, all kinds of stuff stacked up really high. And it was called dramatic imbalance, okay? So it's when you have something like, you know, really heavily weighted on one side and you have something really small on the other. But this would be a good example of like a dramatic imbalance composition right here. We have these leaves right here and then that little animal right there. But that would be kind of a cool composition just like that for dramatic imbalance. All right. They bit people in the first week here. Yeah. And there was 3 of them. A lot of Neosporin there. All right, folks. Thanks again for checking out this. Golden Autumn Light. That's a terrible name, actually. Someone think of a good name for it. All right, folks. Hope you have a great rest of evening. Hope to see you on the next live stream.